My name is Fayokemi Adeyina, and I'm privileged to be here. Thank you for coming. I'll be speaking on component-driven development, majorly in React.js. About me, briefly, before we go into the business of the component-driven development. Um, I have about 4 years of experience working with front-end development, majorly React. I've worked with Edlift in the US, an e-learning platform. I've worked with BotKeeper, an accounting bookkeeping software. I currently contract with Andela, and then I worked with Ideal for an NGO application that helps financial coaches manage their clients. And I currently work for the Bitesize team, the BBC Bitesize, and apparently I can speak so much of my work at Bitesize. I love my role at Bitesize. So, I mean, aside the fact that it was really helpful to students during the pandemic. There have really been so much exciting things going on within and around the team. Internally, the engineering team are so interesting. There's help everywhere. So about that, so what is CDD? Now, CDD is just the short form of component-driven development. Um, so we can see it as more like a component, a building block of something to create pages or what you see on the screen. If we bring it to a layman language, let's say you want to build a house, and so you have rooms in a house. So you have like the dining room, you have like the kitchenette, you have like the restroom and the likes. And let's say in the same house you want to have more than one dining room, more than one kitchenette and the likes. So instead of building each time you want to construct a kitchen or a dining room, instead of building your pattern from the scratch, you can just reuse the pattern you already have. And then it saves you time. I mean, just go in. You already have a design for how your kitchen wants to look like. Just slot it in, and then you have your kitchen. That's how close I can bring it into our normal setting. So um, now we have atomic design, just so I can distinguish atomic design from CDD. So it's clear that although they kind of look alike, they actually is like a little difference, which matters. And so atomic design, if we see from what we have here, we have atoms, molecules, organism. So atomic design holds naming very important. I mean, they're so particular about namings. So it has to be into bits of, you have to have an atom, you have to have a molecule, an organism, a template, and then you get to the page. But in component-driven design, it's not so particular about, we're not so particular about namings. You can give your component whatever name you choose to give it. You're not particular about, you must follow a procedure. I mean, you must move from atom to a molecule and the likes. It's about the performance of the component, making sure that your component is reusable, making sure that, I mean, it works for a distributed team. For an atomic design, it doesn't actually work well for a distributed team. You have to wait for somebody to finish building the components before somebody else can go ahead, and which can slow things down for the team. So this is just an example of, so when we say like a component, this is React. Like I said, this is a case study of React. So most of the code you would see in this side will be React code, and they are JavaScript, of course. So React is a JavaScript framework, and we will get on there. So just briefly explaining what are components. So components in this case are independent and reusable bits of code. So when you refer to a component-driven design, we're talking about something that is independent, that you can actually use independently. So if it's a button, you can display the button without displaying the entire page or whatever you may have. And then it is reusable, very clean and reusable. So if you see the bit of example we have here, very clean. And there are two types of components in we have functional components and class components. Difference is the way they are written, the way it is called. This is called as a function. And yes, this is ES6. I use arrow function here. You can use ES5. I mean, if it's ES5 or ES6, as long as you write it in a function type, it's a function. And then this is the class method, calling it as a class method, as seen in the examples. Now, React is a JavaScript library for building interface. That's what React is. We have several other JavaScript frameworks. We have Vue, we have Angular. So React is not the only JavaScript framework we have, but like I said, this is a case study using React. So, okay. Yeah. So this is more like how your React renders your code. This is a live code editor. This is how you can see your code. This is just a simple component, and it's displaying what it gets from a props, from a parent prop. So you can see it as a child passes a component down to his children. I mean, a parent passes a component down to children, and a child can be used by several parents. So the bits of components can be used by several parent components. You can use a button component in several parent components. You can use it in a form to build a form. You can use it to build a click on button that navigates to another page, and they like some React renders its components based on the DOM. So if you see how this is written, when you render whatever you render, it sends it back and picks it as. So it's built on top of JavaScript, and it's really interesting. Concept of CDD, and so I have a picture of, I mean, these are kids trying to build something from the scratch. So see, there's a blue layer, started with a blue layer, then went on and kept building, more like building a house, or I'm not sure what she's building right now, but something that will eventually become fascinating. Just looking at the piles of toys, it doesn't make any sense just yet, because you can't click a button all by itself. I mean, you have to integrate the button into something that is usable. The button has to do something, either it's signing up a form or doing something. So, but the end of the whole experience makes it worth the while you're building your component. This diagram just says how to be component driven. So following this as it flows, build one component at a time. Components could be a button component, an input, and the likes. Combine the components. So now you can have a form, having a form, you can have a form, integrate the button you have built into it, an header, a table, and the likes. Then you assemble several pages, several components that you've combined. Then you can start having a full page, say an home page, a profile page, a checkout page, an e-commerce landing page, and the likes. Then you integrate your pages into your project. That's when you have the complete site. Then you have like an e-commerce site that goes from one page to another route, one URL to another route, and keeps mapping, and then it becomes really interesting. However, noting that you actually started from a single component, a component that does just one thing. So, and it is reusable by other components. So you can, when you don't have a non component driven page or layout or file, as the case may be, um, when it is page based, if you have to write your whole you design your whole flow, you have a form, you have a button, you have a list inside of a file, inside of a component, something. So you are building, for instance, if you are building a landing page, and then you have everything that the landing page covers inside of a component, that is not component driven. It's definitely not reusable, because it means you have to each time take out your entire landing page to take it into another component. So if there is no consistency, and this is part of the tricky areas which I will talk on. So you have a button component already, which the entire team can actually use, but somehow maybe a team member doesn't really like the component you have built, and then creates their own button component, and that it actually has a different styling. So when you get into the page, you kind of see different button components One is without a border radius, doesn't have a sharp corner, has like a curved corner. One has a sharp corner and a lot of inconsistency. Now that's not component based. When you spend lots of time to building, I mean, that takes your time. When you already have a component, you can just reuse. Why start all over again? And so just reuse the components. Now it's not modular. You have a lot of things in that component. You have a form, you have a button, you have a pop-up, you have a modal inside of one component. Now that is not modular. You can't detach it, because detaching it will mean breaking a whole lot of things on the page, and which means that it will be very hard for you to actually debug. So if something was wrong, you wouldn't know if it was the form you wanted to debug, if it was the button, if it was the list, or the several components you have. Now, why am I pitching CDD? Why CDD? Why component-driven design? Why is it good? I have reusability, durability, adaptability. I just have some pictures to show. I mean, so reusability, more like we have a button component already. I mean, that's like the simplest component you can think of. There is a styling for it. Each team can put in their own styling if they don't like the default styling or the default color put in their own click, passing their own click functionality to it. Now, anybody that has any reason to add a button to the page knows that there is a button component. I don't have to create my component from the beginning, which is good news. I mean, it saves you lots of time. Then it is durable. Now, durability comes in the sense that you have your page. Now, your page is working. If for any reason something breaks, something doesn't work, you don't have to pull down your entire website. You don't have to pull down your entire application just because something is not working. It's easier to debug just because you have them in bits of components. So you can know if it is the button component that is broken. And if you have a test running, it can actually tell you where that component is broken. So it is actually durable. So in the case of if it's a dependency you are using that is outdated, or is no longer being updated, you can just take the dependency down, replace it with something, and then you don't have to take down all your website. It is adaptable. I mean, you can adapt it to several models. So if you already have a design for your button, I mean, for instance, you want to change the way your view looks, your website looks, and you see the color of the button that you already have, and you want to change to something less flashy. Perhaps you got a feedback that the button is taking a lot of attention, and you want to reduce. It is very adaptable. It's something you can easily go in, search for the button, changing it in one place, which can also be a disadvantage. But changing it in one place actually fulfills the part that, okay, this actually works for whatever use case that I want to do. Yeah. Fourth point is quality. Of course, quality codes comes from a code you can manage, a code that you can successfully manage, and not just you, but a couple of persons. So if it's just about you understanding what you have written, then I don't think it makes sense. But if a new developer comes into your team and you have your code built with components, built with things that are reusable, they can easily understand what has been done and what needs to be done. And of course, it can give you, since you will be writing unit tests for each of your components, that can give your code quality. So when something is not running, the entire page doesn't just flash back at you and error out on you. You can see that, okay, this error is coming from something within the button, this error is coming from something within the form component we have written. So that gives you actually a quality code, making your tests very easy for you to debug. And so the speed here is not even about the build time. Of course, that can be applied based on using React and how it is bundled with Webpack and the likes. But the speed here that's why it's a human figure of a speed. More like, I mean, there's speed. If the marketing team comes today and says, "Oh, we need this page to be ready, and we've marketed it. We need it to be ready tomorrow, just because we sold it out. We've told people it's available." I mean, there's no sweat. If the components are already available, it's just a matter of assembling those components together, and then you have a full page, even meeting the deadline. So yes, you can say it gives you speed and efficiency. It's efficient. It's very efficient. Um, in whatever definition you can look at it from. So I have like a diagram showing speed, quality, and then gives you cost. So the cost here is more like so a scenario where your the marketer, I mean, there are companies that the sales or the sales team or the marketing team has already gone ahead of you and pitched something to the client. This is flying. When you click on this button, you just see flying all around and the likes. And if you already have a component that does whatever flying thing that the marketer has already pitched and you have a deadline to meet with reusable components is something you still have your sleep. You can easily couple them together, more like coupling them. You have pieces together, you couple them, and then yeah, everybody wins. Your marketer is happy, the client he has pitched idea is happy, and then it keeps bringing in more money. It saves you less time to roll out tickets, to roll out tasks and functionalities. And yeah, tricky areas, a lot of times, personal experience, I've seen sometimes some teams and some components say they are using a reusable component, and then those components are not flexible in the sense that it already has a color, it already has a font style, they already have fixed images, or their the on click is already stipulated inside of that component. The methods, the event handlers are already in that component. Either or, and any of these cases is actually not reusable. Because for someone who wants to reuse the component, the person would have to do a condition. Okay, if I'm on this page, I want the on click to do this. I want the on over to do this. I want the color to be this. Right inside of the component. That makes the component really messy, unreadable, too much things, too much activity going on in there. Whereas your component needs to be as clean as possible, as clean and as empty. Let me use it that way. As empty, very, very scanty, not busy at all, because it needs to be reusable. Anybody that comes in there should easily get it. Just understand, what do I need to pass into this component for it to work. And yeah, so I splitted it into the view, the functionality. The view and functionality should be in your component. I'm saying functionality, not the entire code, just passing them as props, and that's what React gives you. And then the business logic, every other thing is handled from the parent. What happens when I click on a button? What happens when I am on a page? So, for instance, if you're working in a company like BBC, what happens when I'm on the news page using the same components? What happens when I'm on the Bitesize page? Do I want the same color? Of course, we don't have the same. If you're familiar with the BBC site, we don't all have the same colors on the BBC sites. Some team are using red, some team are using blue, and the likes. Now, because the components are reusable, we are able to specify that, okay, based on either domain, either based on the page that is being loaded, we want different colors specified, which is actually what you call a reusable component. And some tips on how to handle styling in reusable components. Sometimes we can use, there are some of the already made styling components like BEM classes, I think Bootstrap, Material UI, some of them gives these themes, and where you can add a color and you can say secondary or primary or the likes, and you can add a color field to it. Then if you are actually um, coupling your styling together or the likes, I don't know if levers is a general name, but I have seen teams where we use levers, so it might be any name. And how it works is more like, let's just say domain. Based on the domain you specify, you pass in a font style, a font color, a color background, a type of whatever thing you want to do based on the colors, and that will be based on the domain. So these pages will be rendered based on what domain you eat, what URL you have actually it. And then there are also teams I've seen them use brands. And so, like I said, it might be just the naming, but the whole idea is, so you can render different styling based on, say, this component. I want you to render this styling, whatever, irrespective of the page calling you. It can be based on, okay, based on the domain, I want you to render a particular styling. Once you hit slash byte size, once you hit slash news, once you hit slash spot, I want you to be this color. I want you to take this color and the likes. And same goes for the brands. And that way. So another advantage of using using CDD is you can actually integrate component explorers like Storybook. If you went to this thing, this is more like a Storybook link, and it can give you the pop-up view, so you can see the page irrespective of where it's being used. And this is what a Storybook looks like. It's very public. I just picked it online, and so this is a component. It just does a pop-up, and you can see that you can do several things when you trigger, when you it comes up with something. That is reusable component. Now this can be integrated with any page or any component, any parent component. All you need to do is give it, supply the heading. Of course, the heading is going to be based on what you want to give it to, and the body based on what you want it to have. Also, if it wants to be very perfect, this should be reusable buttons from your component, not a button that you already created. This should be part of your already existing buttons, which should be a different component. So you can say this is like two components, but yes, it's still a reusable component, even though it's combining two things together. And so just a saying from Charles Duhigg, between calculated risk and reckless decision making lies the dividing line between profit and loss. So of course, for you to build a house, you have to think about the cost of the house. How would I want the house to go? How much would it cost me? Do I have the amount of money this house is going to cost me? What instruments, what things do I want to do? So it's actually okay for before building any component or before building any site or application, it's okay for you to sit back and think about how do we want to use CDD? And based on some of the things I've shared, if I've convinced you enough that actually it's a good try for you to implement CDD when building a UI design, then have rules, set rules and guides, just so you can help both the junior engineers and everybody coming into the team, so they understand that this component needs to be reusable, just so we can move out of things very fast. My closing speech sort of, if the components are not reusable, the design is not component driven. So however way you put it, even if you name the components reusable component, if they are not reusable actually, then they are actually not component driven, just because it's not useful to anybody else except you who created the component. Um, Thank you for listening. And yes, my name is Fayokemi Unja, so at every platform.